AITA for removing my name from a loan after my wife mocked me in front of her brother? I'm Robert, 42, and I was Claire's husband for 11 years. For most of that time, I believed we were the kind of couple who could argue hard, cool down, and eventually come back to the same side. I was usually the one at that table with a stack of envelopes. I'd check autopay twice, even after the confirmation email came through. I kept old receipts in a kitchen drawer that Claire hated because they caught on the wooden track and made the drawer stick. I wrote the mortgage due date on the paper calendar by the refrigerator, even though both of our phones reminded us. Claire used to call me dependable. Later, she called me afraid. That change happened slowly enough that I kept explaining it away. Marriage gets tense. People get tired. Families create pressure. You say something sharp, you apologize, and you move on. At least, that was how I thought it worked. Claire had always been bolder than I was. When we first got together, I liked that about her. She would decide on Friday that we needed to repaint a room by Sunday. She would book a weekend trip while I was still comparing hotel cancellation policies. She made our life feel less cautious, and I made sure her ideas didn't leave us eating cereal for dinner until payday. For years, the balance worked. Then her boldness became vision, and my caution became the problem. The first time she called me a human speed bump, we were standing in the kitchen over an estimate for replacing the back steps. I asked why the contractor wanted half the money in cash before ordering materials. Claire rolled her eyes and tapped the estimate with one fingernail. You don't have to audit life, Robert. I'm not auditing life. I'm asking why he wants cash. He explained it. He said it was easier. It probably is. She gave me a tired smile. This is what I mean. Every simple thing becomes a trial. We hired someone else 2 weeks later after the first contractor stopped answering Claire's messages. I didn't say I told you so. I just put the new receipt in the drawer. That should have been harmless. Instead, it became part of the story Claire told about me. She was the person trying to move our life forward, while I was the person who made everything difficult. Her younger brother, Trevor, loved that version. Trevor was 36 and always one good opportunity away from the life he believed he deserved. He had tried online retail, property cleanup, custom gym equipment, and a delivery service that folded in less than a year. None of his ideas were completely ridiculous. The problem was that he treated every risk as somebody else's test of loyalty. The first transfer I noticed was $800. Our joint account covered the mortgage, utilities, insurance, groceries, and repairs. One night, while checking whether the electric bill had cleared, I saw a transfer labeled T-Help. I asked Claire about it while she was loading the dishwasher. It's Trevor, she said. I figured that out. What's it for? He needed to cover something. What thing? She shut the dishwasher harder than necessary. A business expense. Is he paying it back? Probably. When? She let out a single laugh. It's not a corporate merger. It's my brother. It came from the account we use for the mortgage. And I put money into that account too. I know. That's why it's joint. She stared at me like I had missed something obvious. Family helps family. Then family can write down what it borrowed. That line made its way back to Trevor. A few days later, he texted me a picture of a handwritten note that said, I, Trevor, owe the Royal Treasury $800, with a dollar sign drawn like a cartoon. Claire thought it was funny. I didn't. The $800 became $1,200 a few months later, then $600 after that. Sometimes Claire told me beforehand. Usually, she mentioned it after I noticed. Whenever I asked for a repayment plan, she made the question about my attitude. You've never liked him. That's not true. You don't respect him. I don't respect spending shared money without a conversation. See? You turn him into a transaction. He turns himself into a transaction when he asks for money. That argument ended with her sleeping in the guest room and telling her mother that I hated seeing Trevor try. I knew because I overheard part of the call. I was wiping down the kitchen counter. Claire stood in the hallway with her back to me, speaking quietly, but not quietly enough. He never supports anything, she told Diane. If Trevor came in with a guaranteed check, Robert would still ask what kind of pen he used. I froze with the dish towel in my hand. Diane said something I couldn't hear. Claire replied, exactly. I'm tired of explaining him. I waited until the call ended. Why are you telling your mother I don't support anything? Claire turned, startled for half a second, then annoyed. Were you listening? I was standing 10 feet away. It was a private conversation. You were talking about me in our house. Oh my God, Robert. This is exactly what I mean. You're analyzing a phone call now. I'm asking why you said something that isn't true. Maybe I wouldn't have to explain you if you acted like a partner. After that, partner became her favorite word. A partner didn't ask why Trevor's payment was late. A partner didn't question a credit card charge. A partner didn't need 3 estimates. A partner trusted. Claire rarely said what a partner was allowed to expect in return. The home equity loan first came up on a Sunday afternoon. Papers were spread across the kitchen counter. A repair estimate, 2 credit card statements, a printout from the lender, and a yellow legal pad covered in Claire's handwriting. She had made coffee, which was usually a sign she wanted me relaxed before a conversation. We're losing money every month, she said. On what? Interest. Delayed repairs. Everything we keep putting off. Our house did need work. The back steps had been handled, but the roof flashing needed attention. We also had an old water heater and a crack near one window that let in moisture during heavy rain. We also had a balance on a joint credit card from a string of repairs and medical expenses. The interest rate was bad. I had been paying it down steadily, but slowly. Claire pointed to the lender printout. If we use the equity, we can fix the house, consolidate the card, and stop bleeding money. That part made sense. Then she added, Trevor may need a small amount for the new space. I looked at her. How small? We haven't finalized it. What space? He found a commercial unit that would work for the equipment business. The equipment business he stopped doing? He didn't stop. He paused because storage was killing him. How much does he want? He's putting together numbers. Then he can bring us the numbers. Claire's mouth tightened. I knew you'd do this. Do what? Turn a practical plan into an interrogation. A loan secured by the house is not a practical plan until I know the amount. It's my house too. Yes, which is why you also get to say no. She took a slow breath through her nose. I'm not saying we hand Trevor a blank check. I'm saying we take care of the house, reduce interest, and maybe help him get started. All of it would be transparent. Then send me the complete packet before anything gets scheduled. You'll have it. And the final numbers don't change. They won't. I didn't agree to sign. I agreed to review. Claire treated those as the same thing. Over the next 2 weeks, she became unusually cheerful about money. She talked about the roof as if it had already been repaired. She told me we would finally clean up the debt. When I asked for the full loan use breakdown, she sent screenshots from an estimate instead of the actual document. I told her screenshots weren't closing papers. She smiled without humor. Of course they're not good enough. They're cropped. They show the total. They don't show fees or disbursement. Dana will have everything. Dana was the loan officer. I had spoken to her once early in the process, when she confirmed the lender needed both of us because the loan would be secured by the house. 3 days before the closing, I asked Claire again for the final packet. She said it hadn't been issued. The night before, she told me Dana would print it. That's not what we discussed, I said. You said you wanted to read it. Read it there. I said I wanted it before the appointment. And I can't create a document the lender hasn't sent. Then we moved the appointment. That was when Claire's face changed. Not dramatically, just a flash of anger she covered too quickly. We cannot keep moving everything because you freeze. I'm not frozen. You always do this right before a decision. I'm asking for the terms. You're asking for another excuse. I should have stopped the process then. I didn't because part of me still believed she was frustrated, not deceptive. I told myself the lender had been slow. I told myself Claire was reacting to years of arguments about money. I told myself I would read every page at the table and refuse anything that didn't match. I also didn't want to be the man Claire kept describing to everyone. The anxious husband who killed every opportunity. That mattered more than I wanted to admit. The closing was scheduled for 10 in the morning. I arrived 5 minutes early and found Claire already sitting across from Dana. Trevor was sitting beside her. He leaned back in his chair like he had been invited to watch a game. Look who made it, he said. I thought the pen might need a background check first. Dana gave a small, professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. I looked at Claire. Why is Trevor here? He's involved in one portion, she said. It's not a big deal. Trevor spread his hands. Relax, man. This is what opportunity looks like. There were 3 neat stacks of documents on the table. Dana began reviewing the loan amount, rate, projected payment, and closing costs. The loan amount was much higher than the number Claire had shown me. I interrupted. Can you repeat the principle? Dana did. I looked at Claire. That is not the number we discussed. It includes the final structure. What final structure? The debt payoff, the work, Trevor's allocation, reserves. What reserves? She gave me a look that said I was embarrassing her. Dana slid the allocation sheet toward me. The repair amount was less than a quarter of the loan. The credit card payoff was there. Trevor's planned disbursement was more than 3 times what Claire had called a small amount. Then there was a line labeled Housing Transition Reserve. I read it twice. What is this? Claire answered too quickly. Temporary lodging. For what? If the repairs make part of the house unusable. The repairs listed here are roof flashing, water heater replacement, and window work. We don't know what they'll find. Then why is the reserve already assigned? Trevor groaned softly. Here we go. I ignored him and looked at Dana. Were these allocations in the version I previously acknowledged? Dana paused. She turned to her computer and clicked through the file. The total amount changed after the initial disclosure, she said carefully. Did I approve the change? There is an electronic acknowledgement from Claire. I do not see one from you. Claire tapped the papers. Robert, we went over this. No, we didn't. We talked about every category. You told me repairs, car debt, and a small amount for Trevor. That is what this is. This is not small. Trevor leaned forward. It's a real business, Robert. Real businesses cost real money. Then a real business should have real financing. His smile disappeared. This is why nothing big ever happens around you. Dana stopped moving papers. Claire pushed the top page closer to me and placed the pen beside it. Just sign, she said. Money decisions should be handled by people who don't panic. The room fell silent. She had said similar things before, but usually in our kitchen, in the car, or under her breath after an argument. This time she said it in front of her brother and a loan officer. While trying to put our house behind debt, she had changed without my approval. Trevor smirked. Finally, he said. Somebody said it. I looked down at the pen. For a few seconds, I could hear the air vent and the soft clicking of Dana's keyboard. My face felt hot. Every instinct I had developed in 11 years of marriage told me to explain myself, defend myself, prove that I was not scared. That was exactly what Claire expected. Instead, I put the cap back on the pen. I asked Dana, "Can this loan close without my signature?" "No," she said. "Then remove me from the file. I withdraw my consent." Claire stared at me. "What? I'm not signing." "Robert, stop." I turned back to Dana. "Please send all future communication to me in writing. I also want written confirmation that no funds will be dispersed." Dana nodded. "I can do that." Trevor stood up, so fast his chair rolled backward. "You had one job." I gathered the papers I had brought. "No, I had one signature." Claire followed me out of the office and into the parking area. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" "Yes. You humiliated me in there." I stopped beside my car. "You called me incompetent in front of your brother and the loan officer because I asked why the documents changed. You made it a scene." I capped a pen. "You sabotaged the whole plan." "I refused debt I was misled about." "You always make the worst possible assumption." I read the numbers. Her hands opened and closed at her sides. "Trevor has a deadline. That is not a reason for me to sign. He already put down a deposit." I stared at her. "What deposit?" She looked away for half a second. "The unit required one." "Where did he get the money?" "He handled it." "Then he can handle the rest." "Don't do this." "Do what?" "Punish my family because you felt embarrassed." I unlocked my car. "You didn't ask for trust. You tried to corner a signature. From now on, anything about this loan goes in writing." She stepped closer. "You're really going to hide behind paperwork?" "No, I'm going to stand behind it." I drove away before I said something I couldn't take back. My phone began vibrating before I reached the next major intersection. Claire called 3 times. Trevor called once. Then the messages came. "Claire, turn around." "Claire, you are not thinking clearly." "Claire, Dana can still fix this today." "Trevor, you just cost me the space." "Trevor, real risk scares guys like you." "Trevor, Claire told me this was handled." That last message mattered. I pulled into a grocery store parking lot, took a screenshot, and sent one response. "What exactly did Claire tell you was handled?" He didn't answer. I called my sister Julia instead. Julia was 5 years younger than me and had the useful ability to become furious without becoming reckless. I told her what happened. She was quiet for a moment. "Do not go home and have a screaming match," she said. "I wasn't planning to. You were planning to explain until your head falls off. That was fair." "She changed the loan," I said. "Then save everything." "I have the papers." "Save the texts. Ask the lender for the timeline. Do not touch the joint account until you understand what happened." "I'm not trying to hurt her." "I know. That's why I'm telling you not to do anything she can label as punishment." I rubbed my forehead. She called me incompetent in front of Trevor. Julia exhaled sharply. "You can grieve that after you protect yourself." That sentence stayed with me. When I got home, Claire wasn't there. Her coffee cup from that morning was sitting in the sink with a dark ring at the bottom. The legal pad from the loan discussion was gone. I opened my laptop at the kitchen table. First, I downloaded the last 6 months of statements from the joint account. Then I saved the loan screenshots Claire had sent me. I made a simple folder with dates instead of dramatic names. I didn't know what I was looking for yet. I only knew Claire had changed the loan, told Trevor I had agreed, and committed him to a deadline before I signed. The joint account showed a withdrawal large enough to cover the kind of commercial deposit Trevor had mentioned. It had happened 9 days before the closing. The description was vague, but the amount stood out because it was several times larger than Claire's earlier transfers to him. I sent Claire a text. "Please identify the purpose of the joint account withdrawal dated the 8th. Her reply came less than a minute later. "Don't start acting like a bank examiner." I wrote back. "Joint money requires joint consent. Please identify the purpose." She called instead. I let it ring. A voicemail appeared. "Robert, stop creating evidence for some imaginary crime. The money was for Trevor's deposit, which you knew about. Call me." I had not known. I saved the voicemail. Then Diane called. I almost ignored it, but I answered because I still had the old reflex that said family conflict could be fixed if everyone slowed down. "Robert," she said, without greeting me. "Claire is beside herself." "I'm sure." A good husband doesn't make his wife beg for family. A good spouse doesn't change a loan and demand a signature. She explained the loan. She gave me a different amount. Paperwork changes. Consent doesn't. "You are making my son pay for your pride." Trevor paid a non-refundable deposit based on money that was not approved. He trusted Claire. That was his decision. Family helps family, not by putting a house behind secret debt. Her voice hardened. "You have always looked down on him." I'm ending this call. Documents don't make cruelty decent. No, but they make facts harder to change. I hung up. That night, Claire came home after 11. I was sitting on the couch with the television off. She walked in, dropped her bag by the chair, and stood there waiting for me to speak. I waited too. "Finally," she said, "are you proud of yourself?" "No. Trevor has 5 days. Then he needs another funding source. You could still sign." "I won't." "You're willing to lose this marriage over money?" The question landed wrong. Not because I wanted to lose the marriage, but because she spoke as if I were the one who had attached it to a loan document. "I'm willing to refuse a loan you changed without telling me." I adjusted the allocations. "You tripled Trevor's amount. He needs enough to make it work. You added a housing reserve. We discussed repairs. You told me temporary lodging. That is what it is." "Which lodging?" She looked at me, and for the first time that day, I saw fear instead of anger. Then it was gone. "You're exhausted," she said. "We both are. Let's sleep and deal with this tomorrow. Send me the complete explanation in writing." She laughed bitterly. "You sound like a lawyer." "I sound like someone you try to make responsible for debt." She picked up her bag and went to the guest room. The next morning, Dana emailed both of us. Her message was professional and neutral. For clarity, she wrote, the loan could not close without both signatures. No funds had been disbursed. The final principal and allocation changes had been acknowledged by Claire, but not by me. My withdrawal of consent had been added to the file. Attached were the closing disclosure and loan use estimate. I forwarded the email to a personal archive and downloaded every attachment. The housing transition reserve had a routing note tied to an apartment management company. Not a hotel. Not a short-term rental service. An apartment management company. I stared at the line until the words stopped looking real. Then I checked the joint account again. 3 weeks before the closing, There was a payment to the same company. The amount was smaller than a security deposit, but consistent with a holding fee. I searched my email for the company name. Nothing. I searched the folder of documents Claire had sent me. Nothing. I didn't confront her. That was the moment my behavior changed. Until then, I still thought I needed an explanation from my wife. After seeing the apartment company, I understood I needed facts before she knew which facts I had. I contacted the management office using the general email listed on the transaction receipt. I didn't pretend to be Claire. I wrote that a payment had been drawn from a joint marital account and requested an itemized receipt for the transaction. A staff member replied later that afternoon. The payment was a holding fee for an apartment reserved in Claire's name. The email included a move-in window beginning the following month. I read it at the kitchen table, beside the paper calendar where I had written the mortgage due date. Claire had reserved another apartment. She had used our joint account, and she had placed a larger reserve in a loan secured by our home. I printed the email, then hated myself for printing it because the ordinary sound of the printer made the moment feel even more final. Claire came into the kitchen while the page was still warm. "What are you printing?" "Account records." She opened the refrigerator and took out a bottle of water. "Have you calmed down enough to fix the loan?" "No. You're really going to let Trevor lose the deposit. You used joint money for it before I approved the loan. It was time sensitive. So is the mortgage." She slammed the refrigerator shut. "I put money into that account. That doesn't make the other half invisible. You're obsessed with control. Who is the apartment for?" Her hand stopped on the bottle cap. "What apartment?" "The one with a holding fee paid from our account." For 1 second, she looked trapped. Then she changed direction. "It was a backup. For repairs." "Yes. The move-in window starts next month. Because that's when work might begin. There is no signed repair contract." "There will be." "Why is the apartment in only your name?" "Because I handled it." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because this is what happens when I tell you anything. You turn it into a federal investigation." I watched her face carefully. Was I supposed to live there too? She scoffed. "I'm not doing this." She walked out of the kitchen, leaving the unopened bottle on the counter. That answer told me more than a denial would have. I called a family lawyer the next morning. The consultation wasn't dramatic. There was no instant plan to destroy anyone. The lawyer asked boring questions: whose names were on the deed, how income entered the joint account, what recurring bills existed, whether there were other loans, whether either of us had moved out, whether I had proof of the changes. I showed her Dana's email, the loan allocation, the bank statements, and the apartment confirmation. She told me not to empty accounts, not to cancel utilities, not to hide money, and not to make threats. "I wasn't planning to," I said. "Good. Then don't let anger give her evidence she doesn't currently have." She advised me to redirect my future direct deposit into an individual account and continue paying documented shared obligations. She also suggested removing Claire as an authorized user from a credit card where I was the primary account holder, while leaving her own accounts alone. "Put everything in writing," she said. Julia had said almost the same thing. I changed my direct deposit that afternoon. I transferred enough money into the joint account to cover my share of the mortgage, utilities, insurance, and groceries through the next billing cycle. I made a simple spreadsheet of what I had paid. I removed Claire as an authorized user from my primary card. I didn't take the money already sitting in the joint account. I sent Claire a message. "My future income will go to my individual account. I will continue paying documented shared obligations during separation discussions. Send bills and proposed expenses in writing." Her response came in 6 messages. "You are cutting me off. This is financial abuse. You cannot just take your paycheck. You are punishing me because I made one decision you didn't like. You are forcing me out." I replied once. "I have not removed joint funds or stopped paying shared obligations. Send any disputed expense in writing." She called me cold. Maybe I was. The truth was that I was barely sleeping. I would wake at 3 in the morning and replay the closing. Not the loan amount. Not even Trevor's smirk. I replayed Claire sliding the papers toward me. She had looked completely certain I would sign. That certainty hurt more than the insult. It meant she had learned my pattern. She knew I would tolerate embarrassment to keep the peace. She knew I would over-explain. She knew I wanted to look reasonable. She had planned around the version of me who stayed. 2 days after I changed my direct deposit, Trevor sent a formal-looking message demanding reimbursement for his deposit. He wrote that my last-minute refusal had caused a direct financial loss. I answered, "Please send the lease document, deposit receipt, and any written statement showing I approved or guaranteed funding." He replied, "Claire told me this was handled." I wrote, "What did she tell you I approved?" This time he answered, "She said you agreed to the full loan and were just dramatic about final paperwork." I saved that too. Trevor's deadline passed on Friday. He lost the unit. The deposit was non-refundable. At 7:12 that evening, he sent me a voice message. "You think you won? You didn't. You blew up a real opportunity because you needed to feel like a man for once." I didn't respond. Claire came home 20 minutes later and found me heating leftover soup. She stood in the kitchen doorway. "He lost it. I know. You could have prevented that." So could he. He could have waited for funding before signing. You knew refusing would cause maximum damage. That was the part one had to be honest about. By the time I capped the pen, I knew Trevor probably had a deadline. Claire had said so outside. I didn't know about the deposit until after the meeting, but I knew my refusal would create an immediate problem. I could have asked Dana for a delay. I could have told Claire I needed 24 hours. Instead, I withdrew completely. Part of me did want the pressure to stop in that room. Part of me knew that if I gave Claire another day, she would spend it calling family, rewriting the numbers, and cornering me again. I knew refusing would stop the loan. I said, "And you enjoyed it." "No. You sat there so calm." "I was calm because if I argued, you would call that panic too." She looked away. "You made me look like a liar. You told Trevor I had agreed." "I knew you would. That is not agreement. You always sign eventually." There it was. Not an apology. Not confusion. A system. She had counted on wearing me down. Before I could answer, my phone rang. The screen showed an unfamiliar number. I let it go to voicemail. Claire stared at the phone, then at me. "Who was that?" "I don't know." She picked up her bag and left the room. The voicemail was from Colin. I knew the name. Claire had dated Colin years before we met. She had mentioned him occasionally in the way people mention an old chapter. No emotion, no threat, just history. His message was short. "Robert, this is Colin. I think Claire may have given me the wrong understanding of your situation. I don't want trouble. You can text me if you want clarification." I listened twice. Then I opened the voicemail Claire had accidentally left earlier that week. At the end, beneath the muffled sound of movement, she had said, "I need this fixed before Trevor loses the space and before Colin starts asking questions." At the time, I thought she was talking to Trevor or Diane. Now I understood it had been meant for someone else. I texted Colin one question. "What did Claire tell you I knew?" He replied about 20 minutes later. "She told me you two had already agreed to separate." I sat on the edge of the bed in the room Claire and I had shared for 11 years. I wrote, "We had not discussed or agreed to separation before the loan closing." The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, then returned. "She told me the marriage was emotionally over and that you were financially controlling. She said she was securing an apartment and would be moving soon. I believed you knew." I asked, "Did she tell you loan money was involved?" His answer took longer. "She said the apartment and transition costs were part of a mutual marital financial arrangement." I assumed that meant you both agreed. I didn't tell him everything. I didn't insult Claire or ask about their relationship. I wrote, "Thank you. Please send one clear statement confirming what she told you I knew." He did. Then he added, "I do not want any part of money tied to your house. Use this message however your lawyer thinks is appropriate." I'm stepping back. That was the point where the last explanation collapsed. The loan was not just risky help for Trevor. Claire had designed it as a bridge out of the marriage. The repair allocation gave the loan a respectable purpose. The debt payoff made it look responsible. Trevor's disbursement bought family loyalty. The housing transition reserve paid for the apartment she planned to use after leaving. And if I had signed, she could have told everyone it was mutual. She would have entered a new apartment with Trevor's business funded and her own transition covered, while my name stayed attached to debt secured by the house. I didn't know whether Claire and Colin had resumed a physical relationship. I didn't need to know. The financial betrayal was complete without that answer. I sent Colin's message to my lawyer. Then I printed it, added it to the folder, and wrote the date in a simple log. That night, Claire asked why I had moved some of my clothes to the guest closet. I'm preparing for separation, I said. Her face went pale. You're serious? Yes. Because I reserved an apartment? Because you reserved an apartment while trying to put the cost into a loan secured by our house. It wasn't like that. Then put your version in writing. Stop saying that. No. You are using paperwork to punish me. I'm using paperwork because your spoken version changes depending on who is listening. She stared at me. What does that mean? It means Trevor thought I agreed. Your mother thought I was blocking a small family loan. Dana's file shows you changed the numbers. The apartment company says you reserved a unit. That is already 4 different versions. Her eyes narrowed. Who have you been talking to? I didn't answer. She took one step toward me. Robert, who? Did you tell Colin we had agreed to separate? The silence between us was immediate and heavy. Claire sat down on the edge of the bed. It was emotional support. That was not my question. We reconnected. Did you tell him I knew? I told him where the marriage was headed. Did you tell him I knew? I didn't want him to think. Yes or no. She looked at the floor. I told him we had an understanding. We didn't. You knew we were unhappy. Unhappy is not separated. You were impossible to talk to. So you made up my consent for him too. She stood again, suddenly angry. You pushed me into finding another place. When? For years. When did I push you into using joint money for a holding fee? You make everything about a transaction. This is a transaction. No, this is my life. It was my house, credit, and name on the debt. She folded her arms. I was going to explain after everything was stable. After I signed. After Trevor had his unit, and I had somewhere safe to go. Safe from what? From this. From being monitored every time I spend money. You used our account to reserve an apartment and gave your brother a deposit without telling me. Because you would have stopped me. That is the purpose of joint consent. She shook her head as if I were proving her point. You don't understand partnership. No, I understand it now. The next week became a campaign. Claire told Diane that I had cut her off financially, pushed her out of the house, and used legal threats because she wanted independence. Trevor said I had sabotaged his future out of jealousy. Diane called Julia, apparently hoping my sister would talk sense into me. Julia told her, Robert is paying the shared bills. Claire changed a home-secured loan without his approval. Diane replied, that is Claire's version against his. Julia said, no, it is the lender's record. After that, Diane stopped calling Julia. Claire and I couldn't keep living in the same house, without every room turning into a negotiation. My lawyer proposed a temporary financial agreement and a property inventory with a neutral mediator. Claire agreed because, I think, she still believed the story favored her emotionally. In her version, I was the cold husband hiding behind technicalities while her family suffered. The mediation took place in a plain office with a long table, a box of tissues, and a machine in the corner that made weak coffee. Claire brought Diane. Trevor came because he wanted reimbursement for the lost deposit. My lawyer sat beside me. The mediator sat at the end of the table and reminded everyone that the meeting was for temporary financial arrangements and property documentation, not punishment. Claire began calmly. She said the loan had been a mutual plan. She said I became anxious at closing, embarrassed her, and then used the incident to gain financial control. Trevor said I had known about his business allocation. Diane said marriage required trust when it matters. I waited until they finished. The mediator asked me for my response. I slid Dana's email across the table. The lender confirmed the final changes were not acknowledged by me, I said. Claire barely glanced at it. That doesn't mean we didn't discuss them. I placed the earlier estimate beside the final allocation. The amount I received before closing was lower. Trevor's allocation increased. The housing transition reserve was not disclosed. Trevor leaned over the papers. You knew what I needed. No. Claire told me a small amount might help you get started. That is what this is. I pointed to the number. Read it. He did. His mouth tightened. The mediator looked at Claire. What was the housing transition reserve for? Temporary lodging during repairs. I placed the apartment confirmation on the table. The room became quiet. Diane looked at Claire. What apartment? Claire didn't answer her. Instead, she looked at me. You contacted them? I requested a receipt for money taken from our joint account. That was private. It was paid with shared funds. You had no right to investigate me. The mediator said, Claire, please answer the question. Was this apartment connected to repair lodging? Claire's jaw tightened. It was a backup residence. For both of you? The mediator asked. Claire looked down. I placed the move-in confirmation beside the loan allocation. The apartment was in her name only, I said. The holding fee came from our joint account. The proposed loan reserve was routed to the same company. Trevor looked between us. You said that reserve was part of the extra operating cushion. Claire turned to him. It was all part of the same transition. What transition? She hesitated. I took out Trevor's texts. Claire told Trevor I had already agreed to the loan. She told me the allocation was small. She told Dana, through the file, that the final changes were accepted by her. And she told someone else that our marriage had already ended by mutual agreement. Claire's eyes locked on mine. You brought Colin into this. I asked what you told him I knew. Diane whispered, Who is Colin? Claire closed her eyes. I handed the mediator a printed copy of Colin's statement. My lawyer had advised me to use it narrowly, so I didn't read it aloud. The mediator read it, then passed it to Claire's attorney, who had joined remotely by speakerphone for the financial portion. Trevor leaned back. Wait, he said. You were leaving? Claire snapped. That has nothing to do with your deposit. It has everything to do with the loan. I was trying to make sure everyone was taken care of. Trevor pointed at the allocation. You told me the money was locked. I thought Robert would sign. You said he agreed. I said it was handled. You said he agreed. Diane looked at Claire with a kind of confusion I had never seen on her face. Claire, what did you actually tell him? Claire looked around the room and realized none of her versions could survive together. Then she did what she always did when the facts became too narrow. She attacked my reaction. This is insane, she said. He has been collecting messages and printing emails like I'm a criminal. He cut off his income, removed me from a credit card, contacted my apartment, and dragged my past into mediation. Does nobody see how controlling this is? My lawyer answered before I could. Robert continued paying documented shared obligations. He did not remove joint funds. The credit card was his individual account with Claire as an authorized user. His withdrawal from the loan prevented new debt. It did not take existing money from Claire. The mediator looked at me. Robert, what outcome are you seeking today? I had rehearsed the answer because Julio warned me not to turn the moment into a speech. A written temporary agreement for shared bills. A property inventory. An accounting of the joint withdrawal for Trevor's deposit and the apartment fee. No new debt secured by the house without mutual written consent. And continuation of the separation process. Claire stared at me. You're divorcing me over one signature. I looked at her. The signature was only where the plan became visible. Her face crumpled for a moment, then hardened again. You destroyed 11 years because I was trying to move forward. You were trying to make me finance your brother, your apartment, and your exit. That is not fair. It is in the documents. You always cared more about being right than about me. No, I cared so much about keeping the peace that I let you treat my consent like a delay instead of a decision. Trevor pushed the allocation sheet away. So the same money was supposed to fund my unit and her apartment? The loan was large enough for both, Claire said quickly. That's not what you told me. You would not have signed the lease if I told you funding was uncertain. Trevor laughed, but there was no humor in it. Exactly. Diane reached for Claire's arm. Did you know Robert hadn't agreed when Trevor paid the deposit? Claire didn't answer. That was enough. The mediator called for a short break. Claire followed me into the hallway. Are you enjoying this? No. You look like you are. I look controlled. You are cold. I had to be. If I let myself be heard out loud, you would have used that too. She flinched. For the first time since the closing, I saw something in her expression that resembled shame. It didn't last. You could still stop this, she said. Stop what? The separation. The lawyers. All of it. What would that change? We could go to counseling. Why now? Because this got out of control. No. It became documented. She looked at the closed mediation room door. My mother will never forgive me. That is not a reason to stay married. Trevor is blaming me for the deposit. You promised money you did not control. And Colin won't return my calls. I said nothing. Her voice dropped. Did you tell him to leave me? No. I told him the truth about the loan. He made his own decision. You took everything. I refused to give you my signature. The mediation ended with a temporary agreement. I would continue covering a defined share of the mortgage, utilities, insurance, and necessary repairs. Claire would cover her own apartment if she chose to keep it. Neither of us could use joint funds for family loans or new housing without written agreement. The withdrawal for Trevor's deposit and the apartment holding fee would be recorded for consideration in property division. There was no dramatic order against Claire. No one handcuffed her. Dana didn't become my personal witness. The lender simply closed the file after my written withdrawal, and no money was disbursed. That ordinary outcome caused plenty of damage. Trevor lost the deposit and missed the lease deadline. Without the loan money, he couldn't secure another unit of the same size. He blamed Claire openly once he understood she had treated my signature as guaranteed funding. Their texts, which Claire later disclosed through the legal process, shifted from "Robert ruined this" to "you should never have told me it was done." Diane stopped calling me cruel. She didn't apologize exactly. She sent one message that said, "I did not know all the details." I replied, "You did not ask." She never answered. Colin cut off contact with Claire. He sent me one final message through my lawyer confirming he wanted no involvement in finances connected to the house. I didn't respond to him directly after that. Claire lost the holding fee on the apartment because she couldn't meet the move-in terms under the original arrangement. She later rented a smaller place using her own income. She said I had wanted that outcome. I wanted the truth before the debt. I told her during one of our scheduled property exchanges. You made those the same thing. The divorce wasn't cheap. There were legal bills, appraisal fees, time away from normal life, and the slow humiliation of listing household items on a spreadsheet. Dining table, guest bed, tool set, holiday decorations. 11 years reduced to categories and estimated values. I hated every minute of it. Julia helped me pack some of Claire's remaining belongings. She held up the old receipt drawer after it came off its track. You keeping this? The drawer. The receipts. I looked at the thick stack inside. Most of them can go. She smiled faintly. Growth. No. The warranty's expired. That was the first time I laughed in weeks. Claire asked for counseling one more time during the handoff of her personal belongings. A neutral witness stood in the hallway with a checklist while she looked through a box of framed photos. I was under pressure, she said. Trevor needed the space. Mom kept saying this was his chance. Colin kept asking when I was leaving. I panicked. You planned. I made bad decisions. You made connected decisions. I'm apologizing. You're explaining why the plan failed. Her eyes filled with tears. So that's it. You're just giving up. I looked at the box between us. There was a photo from our 10th anniversary on top. We looked happy in it. Maybe we had been, for that evening. Counseling might help us end this like adults, I said. It cannot rename a plan as a misunderstanding. She wiped her face. I never wanted to destroy you. You wanted me responsible long enough to make leaving easier. That's not how I thought about it. That doesn't change what you did. We attended several counseling sessions, but not to reconcile. The counselor helped us communicate about the house, shared bills, and the way we would handle family contact. Claire kept trying to move the conversation back to my coldness at the closing. Eventually, I said, I wasn't calm because I didn't care. I was calm because caring had become the lever you used to move me. She didn't answer. The house was sold as part of the divorce. After the mortgage and costs were paid, the remaining proceeds were divided according to the agreement our lawyers reached. Claire's unauthorized joint account withdrawals were factored into the final numbers. I didn't get everything I wanted. Neither did she. Trevor never repaid the earlier transfers. I accepted that pursuing every dollar would cost more than it recovered. That was one of the hardest parts. Understanding that protecting myself didn't mean I could repair every loss. For months after the divorce, I still checked autopay twice. I still used a paper calendar. But the old kitchen drawer was gone, along with the house and the life built around it. In my new routine, every account had a clear purpose. Every obligation had a document. There was no one beside me rolling her eyes when I read the second page. Sometimes that felt peaceful. Sometimes it felt lonely. I didn't walk away untouched. I lost my marriage, part of the value of the home, thousands in legal costs, and the belief that 11 years of shared history guaranteed basic honesty. What I got back was smaller but solid. No one could volunteer my credit. No one could promise my signature. No one could call pressure partnership and expect me to accept the definition. Claire once told me I acted like a human speed bump. Maybe I did. A speed bump is only annoying when you're trying to move too fast through a place where damage can happen. At the closing, I stopped trying to prove I was brave enough to sign. I read the next line, capped the pen, and chose the future I could actually consent to. I lost the marriage I had spent years trying to protect, but I stopped letting peace cost me my future. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.